your projects in. XTBC probably. I call mine S1 for session 1. We're going to create a brand new project. But this time we're not just going to make an empty directory. We're going to use create React app. Let's look at create React app out on the World Wide Webs. Everybody know that Facebook created React? They did. So they did at least one good thing in the history of the world. And Create React App is an official Facebook project that is just a really nice template for creating new React apps. There are a lot of these things out there from other people. This is the official one from Facebook. It's really, really nice under most circumstances. It does a lot of complicated configuration for you without you having to worry about how all this stuff works. Stuff like Babel, right? We need Babel to create real JavaScript out of our JSX. It's already configured for you. It just works. And there's another number of other things that it just takes care of. So create React apps with no build configuration. It has a very, very long README. I don't necessarily recommend reading this thing from start to finish. This is just the table of contents. But if you're ever wondering how to do something with Create React App, look here. You may very well find what you're looking for. So if we've already installed this on our local machines, to create a new project, and again, don't create this inside the folder where one of your other projects is. Create it up in the parent directory. You can just run create-react-app space the name of your project. And the name of our project is Note Herder. Note Herder. And then a bunch of stuff should happen. You see it says installing React, React DOM, and React scripts. Now, Create React App will automatically use Yarn if you've installed it. If you haven't, it'll use NPM. So that React scripts dependency, that's Create React App. That's what's magic about Create React App. It has the single dependency, the single dev dependency called React scripts that includes a whole lot of other things, including all the configuration for those things. Okay, mine worked, and it already says, we suggest you begin by typing cd note herder yarn start. If you were using NPM, it would tell you the other command. But let's look at the rest of this output. Success. Create a note herder there. Inside that directory, you can run several commands. Yarn start starts the development server. Yarn build bundles the app into static files for production. Yarn test starts the test runner. Yarn eject removes this tool and copies build dependencies, configuration files, and scripts into the app directory. If you do this, you can't go back. So we don't want to do that, but I'm awfully curious about what it looks like. So don't you do this, but I'm curious enough that I just got to know. So I'm going to take my note herder directory and I'm just going to make a copy of it. That didn't even, there we go. Note herder 2 has a lot to copy. And I'm going to name this ejected note herder. So I'm going to change into ejected note herder. Again, don't do this with your copy of note herder. And I'm going to run yarn eject because I'm just dying to know what's happening. Well, first, let me just open this up in VS Code. And we're going to see basically what we saw in Dwarf Underground yesterday. We have a node modules directory, a public directory, a source directory, a git ignore right out of the bat, package JSON, readme, and yarn.log. Once I type yarn eject, are you sure? Yes. I just got a config directory now with a bunch of stuff in it. So it had taken care of all this for me. Webpack config.dev. Well, that's a thing. So because we have to do things like Babel, we have a build process. We're actually compiling something. You'll often hear the word transpile because you're not actually making machine code or anything, but you're still translating from one language into another. So you're sort of compiling now. not just running things in the browser the way you write them. Webpack is one of many tools that you can use as a build environment for JavaScript. It's a whole thing. It's complicated. But it's already pre-configured for you if you use Create React App. If you need to change your Webpack config, that's one reason you might have to use eject. So if we needed to change any of this stuff, we'd have to do that. You can see there are a lot of comments in here that at least tells us how this config works, which is nice. But it's doing all kinds of stuff. We won't get into it too much. But that's some of what it's hiding from you. Anybody know what polyfills are? Heard that before? So if you want to use newer features than are supported by a particular browser, oftentimes there's a polyfill, which is going to be a JavaScript script that turns what you write into something that works in the older browsers. Like if you're trying to use Flexbox and you want to use it with IE9, which has a very broken version of Flexbox. There might be a polyfill for that will go and look for any incompatible code you've written and try to use JavaScript to tweak IE's behavior to be what you want. That's what a polyfill is. So the Webpack configuration built into Create React App includes some polyfills right out of the box. Nifty. All right, so we're not going to use the ejected version, though, as neat as it is. Notice that this is kind of nice. It says, ejected successfully. Please consider sharing why you ejected in this survey. And they have a little Google form there. Because if you're doing that, they want to know why, because they're trying to make as much of it configurable as they can. They want you to be able to write a fairly flexible React app using Create React App without having to eject. So some things that you used to have to eject to do, like using a CSS preprocessor, maybe. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe you never had to eject for that, but I know you don't now because I've done it. And it could be that before you had to eject in order to make that work. So they're always looking for solutions. So you have to eject as infrequently as possible. So I have now changed into my note herder directory. You saw there was already a git ignore thing there. I'm going to go ahead and open VS Code. There's already a git ignore file. It has node modules in there. Node modules, you remember, is where all those dependencies actually get installed when you run yarn install or npm install. And as part of running Create React App, it already ran install, so you've already got them all there. We've got our public directory, which is where index.html is, which has a bunch of comments and then that one single empty element in the body, div with an ID of root, that's going to get replaced. Then it's got a source directory, and this is where all your JavaScript goes. This is where all your React stuff goes. It's got an index.js, which is where it does that one line, React DOM render, sticks in your app component, replacing that root element from the DOM. The only line of DOM code you're going to find in here. And then there's some other stuff. And app, you'll notice, is being imported. Import app from quote ./app. So some of these import statements have what look like paths and some of them don't. We talked about this briefly yesterday. If we just say import React from quote React, that's looking for an npm package. That's going to look inside node modules for something called React. When we see a path, /, that means current directory, right? Dot always means current directory. So that means in the same file, in the same folder as index.js, look for a file called index.css and import it. An app, it doesn't say .js because this is JavaScript. If you're importing from a JavaScript file, you don't have to say .js, it assumes it. So import app from app. Why does that work? Why can we import app from app? Let's look at app.js. Yeah. Which line in here makes it possible to import it from that other file? Yeah, line 21 here, export default app. So we can import it because it's exported. And because it's the default export, we can just say import app from app. And app here, again, can be anything we want. I could type import pancakes from app because it's just importing whatever the default export is. And I'm just giving it a local variable name to refer to it. I don't have to use the same name I used inside here. It happened to be a class called app here, but as soon as it's the default export, I can call it what I want. You're going to confuse yourself if you call it something funny. But just in case you're importing from a module that names something the same as one of your local variables, you could always give it a different name. In a React Native app, sometimes I import the text component from React Native, and I also want to import the text component from a project called NativeBase. Well, they have the same name, but I can just rename the NativeBase text component NBText when I import it, and it's fine. Just make sure when you import React, you name it capital R React. Yeah. Why are they doing what? I'm sorry? So generally, when you write a component, there's going to be nothing else in that file except the component. And that includes app. So app isn't going to have the React DOM.render line in it because that's not part of the component. So there's nothing in app.js except the component. So index.js is just kind of our entry point into the app. So it does the stuff that we have to do to get it running, but you're not going to define a component in there. So that's why, because components are generally in files by themselves. And we name our files containing components exactly what we named the component, including the capital letter, as gross as it is to use capital letters in file names. In React, it is the convention when you're creating a component. Notice index.js is not capitalized, but app.js is. And then a lot of times you'll have a CSS file that is specific to that component and a test file, and you'll just name them exactly like you name the component. Now, if you look inside app.js, you see import React, comma, curly brace component from React. So React here is the default export from React. Component is a named export. So you can export more than one thing from a file. You can only export one default, and you don't need curly braces for that, and you can name it whatever you want. For a named export, you import it using curly braces. And in this case, importing component directly just meant that we could write class app extends component instead of class app extends React component. If we had taken that out, we could still write React component, and that would be fine. But it is very common to go ahead and import component so that you can just do this. But we wouldn't have to. So it suggests that we type yarn start. If we do that, it will run a development server, open that in our browser for us automatically. And there it is. Now, our terminal will be dominated by this screen. If we want to keep typing commands, just open another tab and enter commands to your heart's content. You don't have to stop using your terminal just because the dev server's running. So don't kill the dev server every time you want to type a command. By the way, who knows how to kill the dev server? Control-C, that's right. Even if you're on a Mac, it's not Command-C, it's Control-C. That's generally how you kill a running process on Linux and Unix command lines. So I think we saw yesterday very briefly, if I go into app.js now and I change welcome to React to extern bootcamp rocks or something, it just changes immediately. The dev server will automatically refresh the page. So it is building your project in the background all the time. It's translating the JSX down into JavaScript all the time. But it is not minifying it and making it as efficient as you would want to if you were deploying this for real. So that's what it means when it says the development build is not optimized. You don't want to take what it's building in the background now and actually deploy that to a web server. You want to actually run yarn build to generate that. That's all it means. Nifty. So we could go ahead and commit this. It's an empty React app, but it's our empty React app. So let's type get init. We don't even have a repository yet. Let's add. Do a git status, and you'll notice that the node modules directory is not there, right? And I'll just say git commit, initial commit with create React app. Go to GitHub, create a new repository. Note header, it's an empty repository. And then I want to do those same two commands, git remote add origin and git push u origin master. Copy that, paste it in. Hopefully you get no errors. If you get that weird error about ref spec something or other, that means you didn't commit. And you can't push something that you haven't committed. So if that's your error, then git remote add origin probably worked. But you need to type git push -u origin master after you've committed. If I refresh the page, there it is. And notice the README from Create React App is there. So you've got there right on your page a reference. We'll change it to our own README eventually.